everybody, and welcome to the Texas Real Estate and Finance Podcast. I am your host, Mike Mills, a North Texas mortgage banker with Service First Mortgage. And today we are looking under rocks for real estate deals that you probably didn't even know existed. And here to shed a little light on this unmined gold is Carey Worrell. She is the founder of SimpleLawTX and a Harvard-trained attorney with nearly 2 decades of experience. So she's a pretty big deal. And we're diving into probate real estate, how to find overlooked deals, and protect your license with smart legal strategy. So if you work in real estate, finance, or investing, this conversation is going to help you spot opportunities and avoid some of those landmines that we all run into. So, Carey, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself? Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Doing well. And you are in Austin or Houston? What did I just slipped out of my brain? Houston.
No,
Okay,
Houston,
sorry.
Houston area, but we work all over the state, but physically located in Houston.
Yes, where it's muggy and it smells bad. That's my impression.
Hey, no, that you need to come to Houston. Check out. Muggy, yes. Smells bad,
Yes.
parts, but not all.
Not all the way. Sometimes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No, that's fair. Okay. So before we get into your background a little bit, I do want to kind of dive right into stuff because this is a really interesting topic that I never even considered honestly until we had a conversation about this before the show. And I think it's really great because especially right now when the market's a little slower, than people want, although it is picking up, rates are probably starting to come down some. The Fed's probably going to make a rate cut in September. We'll see what that does. But we could start to see some things show up. But also to add to that, that means a lot more listings are going to pop up most likely because people are going to be ready to sell. And that's where we kind of get into some of this probate stuff. And so I was reading something the other day and it said it was a Legal Shield study that basically said that 41% of boomers and 45% of Gen X don't have a basic will. And basically they're implying that, when it comes to, I think it's called intestate estates and in title issues, these are popping up everywhere because of these issues. Because unfortunately, I'm Gen X. I think you are probably too, right?
Yeah.
I think we're doing okay. You're an attorney. I figured this out. I do have a will, I have some stuff ready to go, but there's a lot of people that don't. And so when they pass away, these properties kind of get put in limbo if they haven't prepared stuff. And this is kind of one of the things that you guys special in. So I want you to talk a little bit about, what these probates, what the situations are, kind of how they work, and then where it comes into play, especially when we look at, having agents get involved and participating in the sale and sometimes the buying of these homes.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, what do these situations look like? They look different all the time, but the
Right.
reality of it is at the heart of it, every probate issue stems from somebody passing away. And like you were saying with the market, the market has ups and downs, but regardless of how the market is, people are always going to be dying, unfortunately.
That's
And a
true.
lot of times, I mean, it's part of life. A lot of times those people, especially the boomers that you were talking about a minute ago, they own real estate.
Yep.
And in Texas, real estate actually passes to the new owner the instant that somebody dies, right? So the
Okay.
instant that a property owner dies, somebody else owns their portion. Now,
Okay.
who owns their portion? We might not know right away. That person
Right.
might not know right away. And like you mentioned, that could either be somebody left it to them in a will,
Mhm.
or they didn't have a will, and then the state of Texas has default rules for who your property goes to if you die without a will.
Okay.
But even with both of those in place, we still have to have a process to get the paperwork correct, showing that it started with A is now dead, now it's gone to B. We
Mhm.
need something in the chain of title to show that, so that the property is marketable and can be sold. And so that's where probate comes into place. It's typically done in probate courts. It requires a court to make a determination of who somebody's heirs were. There are sometimes you don't need a court, but that will bore all your listeners. But typically it happens in probate court. And once that is all settled, then the property is marketable and can be sold because it's clear who actually owns it.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of generally how the process works. It all starts with somebody dying, unfortunately, somebody who owned real estate.
And does it typically when that starts, I would imagine that, when that's going on, that somebody is not, once somebody passes away, the first person that they're calling is not a realtor. They're calling you, right?
Yeah.
Or someone within that is calling you.
They normally will call a lawyer first.
Okay.
Sometimes if somebody is really close to a realtor, they'll call a realtor first,
Right.
but usually they're calling a lawyer first because they're like, "Oh my gosh, what do we do?" Because and the reason why is that typically a house is not their only asset, right? They
Hmm.
probably also have a bank account, retirement account, cars and everything, things that a
Right.
realtor can't really help them with. So that's
Right.
kind of why they're typically calling a lawyer, a probate lawyer first in order to figure out, okay, what the heck do I do?
Right.
Sometimes, and it kind of depends on the situation. If you have usually a husband and wife that are living in a home and one of the spouses dies, oftentimes they will do nothing about that, right? Because
Right.
the surviving spouse is still living there. No one's complaining about it. They're paying the mortgage if there is one. They're paying the taxes just like they always have. And everyone goes on about their business. But then what happens is then the second spouse dies and now there isn't anyone else living in the home that goes to their heirs. And now you kind of have to deal with the deaths of two people. You have to deal with the death of that first person who, yes, everybody assumes that it went to their spouse, but might not have.
Right.
um, where did their half go? And then where does the second spouse's half go as well? So a lot of times you don't see it until kind of, if you're talking about a married couple, the second spouse dies, and then it's
Right.
actually moving on to a different generation.
So one would be able to argue maybe that if I'm an agent, a realtor in Texas or anywhere really, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to be very familiar or have a good friend who is a estate planner and probate attorney, right?
Okay, so absolutely, and that's where, what you were talking about earlier with like the hidden gold mine that a lot of realtors are just is not even on their radar is these probate leads. There are companies that you can pay to
Mhm.
get leads from the probate court, but by the time something actually is in a probate court, they already have a probate lawyer because that's who
Right.
had to file their probate case for them. And those lawyers, if they're any good, they all have a network of realtors that they work with. I mean, the first thing I usually tell clients is as soon as we file this, you're probably going to get a call from a bunch of realtors that are, scouring the public records and have found that you filed this. Don't talk to any of them because I have a guy that I would like to refer you to.
Right.
um,
And they already
because
trust
I
you because they
exactly
reached out to you. Yes. Hmm.
right, and so they're going to go with whoever their probate attorney most of the time is recommending.
Yeah.
So definitely real estate agents should be networking with probate attorneys. I mean, the leads are they're good leads. These people
Hmm.
have to sell. They're definitely going to sell. They're normally willing to sell it at a reasonable price because they don't have an emotional value attached to it. They just
Right.
want to get the money out of it as fast as possible.
Hmm.
They can typically be very reasonable clients
Yeah.
in terms of their expectations, especially in a market like we have now. Um, and there's just a steady flow of these leads. I always tell people you should go, if you don't know any probate attorneys, go on your LinkedIn, search for probate attorneys in your area, and find the ones that you have some mutual connection with, and then just ask for an introduction.
Yeah.
Because probate attorneys are also looking to meet realtors because realtors also refer business to probate attorneys. So most of them are going to be willing to take your call, willing to go out to coffee, and if you learn the process and you understand the process, that's going to be who probate attorneys are more likely to refer those deals to.
Well, and it's a very rare relationship where actually both parties can have a mutually beneficial situation, right? Because
Right. Yeah.
like with me as a lender working with realtors, do I have deals that come to me first sometimes? Sure, it happens, but it's rare, especially
Right.
when they're trying to buy. More often than not, they talk to an agent and then they call me. So I don't have as much value add as far as like giving them contracts, right? My value
Right.
add is education and services and things of that nature. Whereas in this relationship, not only can you as a probate attorney give them business, but them as a realtor in dealing with their clients can also give you business. So it's very
Absolutely.
much a symbiotic relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and especially, I mean, a lot of probate lawyers also practice real estate. Not all of them, but I mean, that I guess would really be the ideal is find an attorney that does both. And so we do both in our office. We do probate and we do real estate. So I can refer the probate deals to realtors, and then realtors, when they have a problem come up in their deals, they can refer those real estate law cases to me because they're usually going to be the people that see those first.
Yeah. Well, and you had a really good point there, which I think some people, I guess you probably know it, but you just don't. It's kind of one of those things that doesn't resonate until you hear it. But, you know, especially with selling right now. We went through this market where houses were flying off the market just in, one day. And then we've been in 3 years
Right.
almost of some doldrums, you would say. But you still have a lot of sellers out there that are a little unrealistic on what they can get for their house.
Right.
And when you're dealing with someone that has a, personal physical attachment to a property, and you go in and you're saying, hey, this house is worth whatever, 350, and they're going, no, no, we're not selling it for $1 less than 400. Well, that's an uphill battle you got to fight,
Right.
right?
Right.
But in these circumstances, unfortunate as they may be, there is a certain level of detachment removal from that property because, in a lot of cases, I would imagine they just want to get it sold. They don't really,
Right.
they want to get as much as they can for sure. But if the agent's like, hey, if we price it here, I can sell it for that quickly, then they're probably more often going to do that.
Absolutely, especially because, when you have a seller that is like living in their home and they've lived there and they've made improvements, they're looking at how much did I buy this house for? How much is my mortgage? What improvements did I do? And a lot of times those things matter to the seller, but they don't matter to the market. The
Yeah.
market value doesn't care what you did unless it adds value. If it's just something
No.
that you liked, I mean, sorry. And sellers don't want to hear that. But
No.
a probate seller that is an heir, they didn't do any of that. They didn't put in any improvements. They don't really, they probably don't even know how much the house was purchased for. And even if they do know, they don't care because it wasn't their money. They're not paying the mortgage. Right now, they have no cash and they have an asset that they don't care about. And what they want is cash. As opposed to a seller that's living in a home, they still have their home that they're living in. So they can always decide, well, no, if we don't get that 400, we're staying here.
Right.
For a probate seller, they're selling. So
Yeah. Right.
there's
It's
no,
moving.
and yeah, it's moving, and they usually want to move it pretty quickly. And so they can be a lot easier to work with
Yeah.
than people that have an emotional attachment to a home.
Yeah, absolutely. How many issues do you see often running in with heirs? Because I know the heir situation can be, brother, sister, whatever, and this one wants to sell or this one doesn't, and you've got three people involved. You got to get the third one; they're out of the country. Blah 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 blah. So I know this process, can obviously take some time sometimes to get everything lined up. But do you see a ton of, infighting between heirs, and how would you suggest a realtor deal with that, or do you deal with that on your end more?
Yeah, so the thing about probate law is that it's pretty clear.
Okay.
Who owns the property is typically pretty clear.
Okay.
And there's no argument that can be made in the law of, oh, well, I was closer to her, or I did all these things for mom and you did nothing. Literally none of that matters. The law is the
Right.
law and it will tell you who owns the property. So there's not even really much room for fighting on those things. Now, yes, some people fight? They might say, well, yeah, mom had dementia when she wrote that will, that left me out of it, and she shouldn't have
Right.
signed that. There are things that happen like that, obviously. Um, but in terms of just contesting the ownership, they don't really usually go anywhere. The
Yeah.
problems that we have more often are what you mentioned, is that one person does not want to sell the house.
Right.
Um, Especially a lot of times, a really common scenario we see is elderly parent, one child is taking care of that parent in the home, and they are living with their parent in their parent's home. Well, now parent passes away, home is now owned by, let's say, three children,
Yep.
but only one of them actually lives there. And
Right.
chances are that one has not been paying rent, has not been paying a mortgage. And now they're like, well, wait, now I'm just the one quarter owner of this home and I don't have any money, and I don't have, I might not, have the ability to get a home anywhere close to the same quality as this with my one portion. And that can be difficult.
Yeah.
However, there are mechanisms in the law that allow you to force a sale. Now, does it require a process? Yes, it does.
Right.
Is it time consuming and sometimes expensive? Yes, it is. But it's pretty clear cut. The rule is that if you don't want to co-own a property with your co-heirs, you don't have to, and you're going to
Right.
win in court if you bring that case. And so normally I can convince the person that's living in the house that they're just wasting their time and money, but more specifically their money, because time is on their side when they're living in the house for free. But uh, they're wasting their money by trying to fight it because the outcome is inevitable. And I think that's where agents that are really willing, like I've known a lot of agents over the years, and a lot of the kind of, sure, these are none of your listeners, mediocre to less than mediocre agents.
Right.
As soon as something goes wrong in a deal, as soon as the title commitment is like, oh, wait, title is vested in your parents, not you. They're like, sorry, yeah, deal is going to fall through. And then they move on. They don't even
Yeah.
try to work it out. And so for
Yeah.
the agents that are willing to work a little longer on a deal, to work those pieces out, they will work out and they can be worked out. And everybody has an incentive to work them out because there's no asset until it's sold. These people have
Right.
nothing. So um, for the agents that are willing to kind of play the long game and not give up and figure out the system and know how it works and add that value to their clients, there's a lot of money to be made because a lot of agents are not even competing for these deals because they're too hard.
Yeah.
They're really not that hard, but they're perceived as hard and they're perceived as not instantaneous. But the money is kind of guaranteed. And honestly, you can, if you think it's going to take a little longer, you could probably work out a little higher commission if you want to.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to, especially these days with commissions being, a focus of not everybody, but, there's a fair amount of buyers and sellers out there that are aware that, that
Right,
commissions are, they've always been negotiable, but now they're maybe a little bit more cognizant of that and want to,
right,
that when you're dealing in these situations, I would imagine that it comes up less simply because, again, going back to the point of, all they want to do is sell the place. They're just trying to, get it out from under so they can move on with their lives. And they especially don't want to deal with it. It's like, I don't
right,
want to mess with this, and so doesn't want to mess with this. So just hire somebody and they'll take care of it. And so you can command a full commission rate at that level because you're gonna do a lot of work. And yeah, they may take a little time, but anybody knows in this business because it's no different, when you have a relationship with a previous buyer or seller and you send them your holiday emails and you text happy birthday and you do all these things, right? The whole point of that is because the next time an opportunity for them or their friends or family comes up to buy or sell a house, you want them to think of you. That's the idea, right?
yeah,
Well, that's called a pipeline, right? You're creating a pipeline of people. Well, if you have 4 or 5 or 6 of these probate deals going, are they all going to close at once at the same time in the same month? And you're going to probably not, but
right,
you're going to have a steady flow of business,
right,
and I would imagine as far as the work is concerned, there might be some waiting, like you got to wait for this to get cleared and get through the courts and get that done, et cetera. But that's just the waiting period. You're not really having
right.
to do a whole lot of work. So you
No,
can go
right.
focus on all your other stuff at the same time.
Exactly. And I mean, and again, that is where um, networking with those probate attorneys can really help agents because if you convince, I mean, I work with a lot of agents, so I am a firm believer in paying agents the full commission that they ask for if they are worth it.
Right.
And I know the ones that are worth it and I know the ones that are not. But there's enough out there that are worth it that there's no problem paying them, whatever their 6% listing or even more. I mean, I've had agents that have charged more than 6% and they were absolutely worth it. Um, because if you're working with a probate attorney that you have already convinced of your value, they are going to speak up on you're not going to have to convince the client of your value.
Right.
That attorney who's talking to them is going to say, you need to use this person. This is how much they cost. This is an expense of the estate, and it is worth it. Because if you go to somebody who's offering you way less, they're also going to do way less. They don't understand the probate process. And another way I'm able to sometimes, and I don't want to say sell it to my clients, but commit, show my clients the
Yeah.
value of an agent. I say, look, I've worked with this agent on a probate deal. They know the probate process, they know how to do it. They will do a lot of the work that you would have had to pay me to do. Because
Yeah.
if you have a terrible agent doing this, they're not going to do the legwork. They're not going to arrange the calls and do what needs to be done. And I will do it. And I'm
Yeah.
just charging you by the hour, whether your
Yeah.
house sells or not. And so, you're going to get more value out of somebody that is good and that, even if they're charging more than what you could maybe get out there. But again, you don't have to, you only need to convince a probate attorney of that value one time.
Hmm.
And then once you work with them, they're going to be selling you to their
Right.
clients. They don't even really have to sell you. I've never had a client not take my recommendation on the realtor that I
Yeah.
have introduced them to, unless they have a personal friend or, something along
So,
those lines. But if they really don't have anyone and they're like, who do you recommend? It will always go with who I recommend.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and it's not something too where, I would imagine because part of the things that you're going to talk to them in the very beginning is going to be the costs involved to going through all this, right? What your
yeah,
costs are, what
absolutely.
the court costs are, all that stuff. And I'm pretty sure you probably build in, here's what's going to cost to sell the house.
Yeah,
And so they went from a month ago not expecting any money whatsoever from anything
Right.
to a month later, obviously a tragedy occurred, but a month later, and now they're getting a $50,000 check or whatever it is.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
could it have been 53 or 55 if they had negotiated and tried to what? Okay, maybe,
Sure.
right? But they're not. They're just like, okay, good. This looks good. I'm happy. Let's go forward. And now you're not even having the commission discussion really by the time you
Right.
meet the client the first time.
Yeah, they already know what they're paying. They already know you're recommended. And also, something you were saying while we were talking about that reminded me of something I could add about how real estate agents can send deals to probate attorneys.
Yeah.
After somebody has died, yes, it's typically a probate attorney they talk to, but there are actually a lot of probate cases that people don't know are about to be probate cases, like the example of the surviving spouse in a house. So,
Okay.
surviving spouse calls a realtor, I want to sell my house. Oh, tell me about it. How long have you lived in your house? Oh, well, I lived here with my spouse. They passed away. That is a trigger or should be a trigger to the agent to say, okay, you may need to talk to a probate attorney because it seems cut and dry that you're the owner of the house, but it's usually not. And I have a list of things that real estate agents can ask at a listing presentation to kind of vet out these potential problems.
Yeah.
So now, not only are you adding value to your client by showing that you have expertise, you're going to make their deal close faster, which is going to help you and them. Even if there's not a probate issue, just by having asked those questions and bringing it to the forefront, you're going to show them, look, I'm not just an agent that's planning on taking pictures and putting on the MLS and then leaving you till we get an offer. I actually want to make sure that this runs smoothly. And then if there is potentially a probate issue, that realtor then can connect them with a probate attorney. So it really does have another opportunity to be able to give back to somebody that's giving you leads.
Now, is there much crossover between, say, a title company, for example? Because every realtor has a relationship with the title company, and title companies are, sponsored or whatever by attorneys, so they're
Right.
involved. So, how much crossover between, like, if they say, "Well, I already work with such and such title company," and do they do probate too sometimes? And is it how does that work?
So the big title companies that are, even though they do have, fee attorneys that work for them,
Sure.
um, typically those attorneys are not actually doing the probates.
Okay.
They are looking at the file and they're saying, look, you need to get this person's estate worked out, but they're not working out that person's estate. There
Got it.
are some smaller title companies, usually in smaller towns, that are independently owned by an attorney, may have a, different underwriter. Those sometimes will
Dual
do the work
purpose.
themselves, but for the most part, in the big cities and the suburbs, your First American, Fidelity, Stewart, all those big ones, the attorneys that work for them are identifying the issue, but then you have to go find an attorney to actually do
Right.
that for you. And a lot of times the title companies will refer a probate attorney, like, here, call this person, they could probably help you.
Yeah. So it's definitely one of those things where you can't assume that because you have there's someone that works in real estate and they're associated to the title company and they're an attorney that they're going to be able to do this because odds are they aren't. So just
Right.
having a title relationship doesn't supplant finding someone that handles these probate deals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a title company can usually refer you to somebody if you don't have anyone, that can fix it for you, but they're not going to fix it for you. They will sometimes
Right.
do like an affidavit of heirship, but if something needs to be filed in a probate court, they're not going to be doing that.
Okay. So this is kind of a weird, not a weird question, but just a little. I'm curious on your insight of this because I'm sure that you've had because you've been doing it and you work with other agents that you've had people come to you and want to form a relationship or want to refer you business and hope to get some from them, et cetera. So if you were a realtor, right, and you were trying to find some probate lawyers to get associated with or have a relationship with, what would be your method? And I know you mentioned earlier about LinkedIn or whatever, but even just the sit down in the conversation of here's what I would say, here's what I would ask, here's how I would, pr- propose myself to them to say, this is what you can get from me, what can I get from you? Like, how would you approach that?
I mean, I think, well, first of all, it's finding those people and then
Sure.
just getting a connection. If you can get a connection from somebody that's always going to be easier than cold calling. But honestly, cold calling can work, or just sending
Yeah.
out emails or messages in LinkedIn. But I think how the conversation, I mean, I'm a real proponent of the giver's gain, philosophy.
Okay.
I think just asking somebody if they'll go to coffee with you or meet you over Zoom, and then just saying, look, I'm a real estate agent. This is my experience. This is where I'm trying to go. If you do a little bit of research on probate from the beginning, so you at least kind of know the lingo, that might be helpful. I have a webinar you could watch that could give you the lingo to listen to,
Love it.
or to talk to them
Is that on your
about.
YouTube channel?
No, I don't have a
Oh, come on.
YouTube channel. I need
Yeah,
one.
no, I'm pretty sure that you do. Like, I'm
Do
almost
I?
certain. Yes, yes, I'm almost certain that
If
you
I have
have.
a YouTube channel, somebody else has set it up.
It was, I don't, there wasn't much on it because, like, one of the things that I always do whenever I find folks is I look for them on YouTube, and
Right.
along with their other sites and everything else. So, by the way, agents, anybody else listening to this, if you don't have a YouTube, or just if you're what I call a secret agent and don't have a social media profile of any
Oh, that's
kind,
good.
you should
I'm a secret agent lawyer.
certainly. Oh yeah, well, okay.
Oh no.
Let's see, Real Simple TX, right? Isn't that what it is?
No,
No,
Simple Law
Simple Law.
TX.
That's what I can't. My brain's not working today. Simple Law TX. Yeah, there you are.
Well,
Yeah,
I
you
should
got a
check it
YouTube
out.
channel. Yes,
I should
yes.
look into that. Maybe I should put my webinar up there.
You've got
Um,
4 videos on here,
I
and you put
shudder
them
to
up.
think what is
They've
on
been
there.
about a year. They've been up about a year. So,
Really?
yes,
Okay, I need
how
to
to
look
get an
into that. I don't
LLC. Uh huh.
really.
Understanding
Okay.
immigration, green card versus visa.
All right.
So
Yes, that is great advice that you should all go look at on my YouTube channel.
that's right. See, you got to promote your YouTube.
Yeah, there you go. I need to
Yeah,
actually put
yeah.
some good content up there.
And now I'm an
Um,
official subscriber. So now you have a new
all right,
subscriber on there.
also, you'll get an
So
alert if I post something in the future.
that's right.
Um,
That's right.
but back to that conversation that you can have. I mean, I think you just need to let them know. Look, sometimes I have these deals. I always, do you have a list of questions that I could ask my clients that might trigger me to know that they were going to have a probate problem, and then we could work together? Because probate lawyers want you to be able to find that ahead of time also, because then you can refer it to them. So if you can kind of pose it like that, um, I think that's a good way to get the conversation started. But honestly, if you just show yourself as being intelligent and having the wherewithal to like set up a conversation and know that this is a relationship that could be symbiotic, most probate attorneys are going to say, yeah, okay, let's work together.
Yeah.
If something comes my way, I'll call you. If something comes your way, call me. um, and then just, all those things that you do as well. If you have education for them, there are things in real estate that honestly probate attorneys could be educated on as well. I've heard
Okay.
some agents that I know say, oh gosh, I sure wish that the probate lawyer would have told their client this. So for example,
What?
some things like
Yeah. Okay. What
that
is that?
would be, so those things that I hear agents say, a lot of probate attorneys tell their clients, okay, we're gonna we'll go through the process, we will see what the court does, we'll figure it all out, and then but in the meantime, don't pay the mortgage. You don't need to pay the mortgage. And that's not necessarily bad advice from a legal perspective, because a lot of times the heir the heir is not required to pay the mortgage out of their own pocket,
Right.
right? Um, but practically speaking, if the probate is not done yet, there is no access to the decedent's funds. So if somebody was going to pay the mortgage, it would be coming out of the heir's pocket.
Right.
Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. But what ends up happening is that they don't pay the mortgage. Now we end up in a short sale, and now you really are losing substantial value, and you are making it harder. And by the time if you call a realtor when it's already set for foreclosure, they're not going to be able to do anything for you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had called the realtor at the beginning and
Hmm.
said, look, we have this mortgage, what can we do? The realtor's probably going to say, here's your options, this is what's going to happen if you don't pay the mortgage, these are some potential ways that you could get around it. How can I help you make this probate move faster? A lot of times it's the probate attorneys just not being that diligent in getting documents. But if you can go and offer that and say, look, I will help if you just give me the documents that you need signed by the client, I will get them all signed. Like I'm working with an agent now on a deal that it's a lot of people that have to sign documents, and it's a pain for us to track them all down. But the
Right.
agent is doing all of that. And so it's taking a huge burden off of us. And also, honestly, it's getting done faster with the agent doing it because they actually have a personal relationship with the client. And this is one where actually the agent referred the case to me, but um, they know them. They are willing to put in the legwork. Whereas I've got a long list of cases, and that's kind of at the bottom of my list. I'll send all of
Right.
the documents to the client and say, hey, everybody, get everybody to sign this. But then I just wait for them to come back.
Right.
Sometimes that's right away, sometimes it's not. But if there's an agent out there that's like, hey, let's meet up. I'll bring you these documents and you can sign them and I will take them and deliver them back to your attorney. That like makes a huge difference. It sounds small, but
Yeah.
that can make a case literally take months less time.
Really.
And if there's a mortgage that's sitting out there not being paid, that kind of stuff is huge. And it's pretty
Right.
easy for realtors to do it. That's what they do. They like, getting the paperwork done and tracking people down and talking to them. So
Well, I don't
it
know if
can
they
be
like it, but that's
extremely
definitely part of what they
helpful.
do.
Yeah, well, that's true. Different
It's
people feel different about it.
yeah, it's still work in their minds, but
Yeah.
is it I you know, is it a weird thing to say to someone that, a good place to kind of, get familiar with these and you could also be giving back to a community, by the way, would be to kind of spend some time at some old folks homes and, get to know some people there and, bring them snacks and, whatever. I mean, I that sounds terrible, but it seems like there's a
I
place
no,
where
I
people
definitely think I don't know how I feel about like actually approaching the residents of those old folks home, but the people that work there,
yeah,
definitely I would approach and just say,
yeah,
look, this is what we have to offer. This is what we can do. We can provide some education. I mean, even providing, education on estate planning from an attorney's perspective. And honestly, what you could do is link
sponsor
up.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Reach out to a probate attorney and say, look, I want to do this education for the people at this assisted living
Oh,
facility,
mhm.
but I don't have the legal background. Can we team up and put on a presentation and have it be about something actually useful? The people
Yeah.
that work there will remember that you did that. All right, it gives their
Oh, yeah.
residents something to do, and if you're not charging for it and you're just truly giving information, no, absolutely, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, yeah, it's just, this is always such a hard thing because I think people just get a little squeamish about it, because it
Yeah,
ultimately is the result of somebody passing away, which, you never want to take lightly. And it's not something that you're, hoping for or celebrating or anything, but it still happens. You know what I mean?
right.
And it's
And
it's a part of life.
it's going to happen regardless. And I would much rather work with somebody who has actually tried to be helpful and form a relationship with somebody before the event than somebody who tries to prey upon the event after it happens by
Yeah, yeah,
cold calling everyone that has filed a probate case in the county, in the past 30 days. You can do that. You do it enough, you'll probably get some clients. Um, but I don't think it's the best way to get clients. I don't think it's the way to get the best clients.
right, right. Well, I mean, look, like I said when we first started this first part of this conversation, I really, um, people or agents are always asking each other and, they're always looking for, should I buy leads here? Should I go do this? Like, where can I find some business? And like, I really think this is one of those places, especially again, not to be, doom and gloom here, but, the boomer generation, they're starting to die, and there's
Right.
a
Yeah.
lot of them and they own a lot of real estate and,
Yes,
they're
they
the biggest
do.
holder. They're the biggest holder of real estate in the country, like
Right.
by a significant margin.
Yeah.
And, so over the next 10 years, like, I feel like you could probably build a pretty strong career if you just did this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you absolutely could. And once you got good at it, the deals would just come to you. You wouldn't really need to.
Yeah.
You get a few good relationships with a few good probate attorneys, and you definitely could have a career. Another sector that is overlooked, and this is really more of an investment type of opportunity, or realtors who work with investors or realtors who are investors. There's this whole segment of homes, not necessarily homes, any type of real estate that is owned, as a family property. So like it's been owned for generations.
Yeah. Like a lake
So
house or something that mom and dad own. Yeah.
exactly, or even
Yeah.
just an empty lot or agricultural land, whatever it is. It's been
Yep.
passed down in a family for multiple generations. And typically, what happens, or what frequently happens, is that everyone in that family has an agreement of who's living there, right? That's Uncle Joe's portion. That's Uncle Tom's portion. They live there. They pay the taxes. They take care of the property. It's fine. Nobody cares. And that can happen for 3, 4, 5 generations. Eventually, they want to sell that property, right? Somebody wants to sell it. At this point, so for example, I'm working on one right now. It's a house. Nobody's done anything with it for 3 generations. There's one guy that pays all the taxes. He lives there. Everyone's fine with him doing that. Nobody even wants the property. Half of those people that now own it as heirs don't even know that they own it.
Right.
But he wants to sell it.
Okay.
And he can't sell it because now there are 4 generations of probates that nobody has done anything about. So, let's say it started with a couple, then it goes to their, let's say 3 kids.
And then they have
Then
kids.
it goes to 9 kids. Then it's exponential, right? So by the time you get to the 3rd generation, I think this one has like 14 owners.
That's messy.
And
very messy.
Yeah, the guy that lives there doesn't even know some of these owners. It took us months just to figure out who owned the property. So once we figure out who owns it, then you have to find those people. You have to set the record straight in the real property records as to who owns it. Find all those people, convince them that they should give you or sell you their portion in order for you to get it. And a lot of times, that generations of fixing the probate is expensive, right? You have to go to court. You're going to have to pay your lawyer to do it. And a lot of times, if that's owned by 14 people, each person's individual 1/14th portion is less than the attorney's fees would be. So nobody is motivated to actually take care of that problem. And a lot of these properties actually just end up getting wasted, to be honest, because nobody has the knowledge or the money to work it out. So what a savvy investor could do, and honestly, what a realtor could do is find these deals for investors and then take a cut of it kind of as a finder's fee. But is you buy that property for something extremely cheap. So like the last one I did, I think somebody bought it for like $25,000, maybe even less, $20,000. They buy it knowing they don't have a clear title, right? They know that they're going to have to do something to it, but
they have to get the person that's living there to sell it to them, right?
They got to get at least one person to sell it to them. Right. Yes. So, right. And yes, you need to figure out who exactly owns it. If you had a probate attorney on your side or a genealogist, you could work out ahead of time exactly what the risk is in going to this one. In this one, it actually was only one owner, but he still had several probate issues he was going to have to solve in order to prove that he was the owner, essentially.
Right.
He didn't have the money.
By the way, this is a cash transaction usually, right? You can't get.
It's going to need to be cash. You could probably.
Maybe hard money.
You could definitely get you're making me think of another idea, actually. This would be a good lending opportunity. We should discuss this. So, buys a house from this guy knowing that in addition to the $20,000 you pay him, you're basically buying a $30,000 lawsuit to fix the title.
Right.
But that's fine because they have $30,000. My guy didn't have any money. So they pay the $30,000, fix the probate issue. They fix it up. I think they bought it from my guy for $20,000. They probably had to pay about $30,000 in legal fees. They probably had to fix it up, use it with about $150,000, but they just sold it for like $450,000. So, and there are a lot of those deals.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them, and they just sit there. Nobody does anything with them. When you see completely abandoned properties, I bet a large percentage of those, it's for that reason that it's abandoned.
Well, and I wonder if there's a way too, because you could even take it a little step further if you want to be, I wouldn't imagine it would take a lot of work, but whenever there is a property, and I don't know how you would even find this, I'm sure there are public records, but a property that gets passed down, somebody dies, it gets passed to somebody. There's never, at that moment, there's no real intent to sell it or whatever, but you're sending out an email or something to them just saying basically like, hey, whether you intend to sell this property or not, here are some things you need to be aware of now that this is being handed down. Here's some probate stuff you need to be conscious of, et cetera. If you ever have any questions, call me. As an agent, you're just basically saying, hey, look, before something happens to you or so on and so forth, you need to make sure that you get this stuff settled, because the longer you wait, the more expensive it becomes, the harder it becomes to sell, et cetera. So I'm not telling you I want to sell your house, because you may not want to sell it. But what I am telling you is that when you do eventually want to sell it, these are some stuff you need to be aware of. And then you become kind of an expert on that and a go-to once they are ready to sell.
Right. Or even tell them like, look, these are the things you should take care of now so that you can sell it in the future. Because if
Yeah.
you don't do it now, it's always more expensive and more time consuming in the future, because by
Yeah.
then someone else has died or someone's missing or someone's in jail or you're mad at someone. It's always easier to take care of those issues up front. And there are some AI tools that are starting to do this, kind of mine for these properties. I don't know how they're doing it. I wish I knew more about how AI works, but I have like a first grade understanding of it. But whereas what people used to do is just like look at court records and call people who had filed probates, these tools are finding properties that have not gone through probate, because that's what's causing the issue, is that they haven't gone through a probate process and they have these multiple owners. And so there are a couple of software companies that are working on finding these properties using, I don't know actually how they do it. I suspect, if I had to guess, like what are the features they're looking for, if the home in the real property records or in the tax records has had the same person as the owner for more than, like, let's say 75 years,
Yeah.
chances are they are dead and nobody has alerted the taxing authority or done anything about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are properties that are going to likely have something going on, or a property that in the tax rolls has been under estate of John Smith for more than 10, 20, 30 years. You find those, I can almost guarantee there's a probate problem. So you just go approach those people. And if you can find out who they are using kind of genealogy tools, hey, did you know that you owned this house? Oh, you didn't? Well, it's going to cost you, $50,000 to get it. If you just want to sign over your portion right now, I'll write you a check for $5,000. They will say yes to that because they didn't even
So
know
now you
they
become
owned this
part owner of
property.
this property.
Now you're a part owner. And once you're a part owner, you have access to those legal tools I was telling you about earlier to partition the property and get the other property owners to sell it.
Wow. Wow. Okay. We are definitely mining some gold here. This is great. It's crazy to me. I mean, obviously I didn't know any of this, and my wife's a realtor, so I'm sitting here going, oh boy.
Yeah.
But why do you think this is a thing that's kind of so far under the radar? Is it because, for me, I'll say probably because for me, when I start thinking about law and title and attorneys and whatever, my eyes glaze over and I'm just like, oh, right. Like I lose
That's
my,
why you
that's the
just
reason.
said why.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think people kind of just get in this one track focus of what they think is easy, what they think is doable. They don't think about how their profession could mesh with other people's professions
Yeah.
to, kind of come up with some symbiosis. I don't know. I mean, they're actually not necessarily harder. Once you know how to do it, I think they're actually easier.
Yeah.
Um, because you don't have to convince people to use you. You don't have to, you find investors that want these properties. You're not working on getting them up to par. You can deal in volume, and it's just a kind of a numbers game. I think that people, they don't have, though, education on it in traditional realtor training
Yeah.
classes.
No, no,
And
no.
so people just don't even think about it. And honestly, a lot of people, it's just kind of inertia. You've learned something, you've done it some way, your broker did it some way, all the agents you're around do it this way. And until you either come across a deal or you meet somebody that's kind of thinking outside of the box, you're just never going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very similar. Like I experienced this when I first got into lending, and I've been doing it for about a little over 15 years now. But when I first got in, I would have other lenders, like people that I worked with, and because I'd always go around and ask people, okay, how'd you do it? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. And they would say things like, well, whatever you do, just don't mess with condos. I'm like, condos? They're like, yeah, don't, they're terrible. You don't want to do it. Just steer clear of them. They're not worth it, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, like, I didn't know any better. So, the
Right.
first little while, your condo comes up and you almost try to talk people out of it a little bit or whatever the case may be, because you're ignorant of how it works. And then I did my first one within the first year of being there. And it was just like, literally, there's a questionnaire, there's some stuff with the HOA you got to take care of, there's a few issues with insurance. But for the most part, once you know what those little things are, it's just like any other loan. Like it's just easy.
Exactly. Right.
It's just the fear of the unknown that keeps people away because like, oh, this is going to be way more complicated than I think. And the reality is, it's not. Like you just have
Right.
to do one. Now when I have when I have lenders now that ask me, what about this one? What about this one? I will always say, do one. Just do one.
Right.
Like it might
Yeah.
be hard, it might be difficult, you might fumble over it a little bit, but do it because you might also find that it's really not that hard to do if you
Right.
just try. But if you shy away from it all the time, you're just limiting yourself on the type of loans you can do. And this is the same exact thing.
It's exactly the same. And yeah, it probably is going to be hard the first time. You're going to do a
Yeah.
lot of stuff you don't know,
Anything
have a
is.
lot of
Yeah.
questions, but find someone to team up with that will answer those questions for you. But like you said, once you do it a few times, then it's not hard anymore. And now you have a niche that other people were honestly just like too, I don't want to say lazy, but too scared to do it because some people
Yeah.
just have an aversion to learning new things. And I think some of it is they're afraid they'll mess it up, but that's why you kind of just have to find somebody that's willing to help you. There are a lot of great people out there that are willing
Yeah.
to help you.
Yeah. No, I think so. And I think that, this is kind of like instead of paying money for Zillow leads or instead of paying money, to some credit bureau or third party thing to get these leads, when you're actually going about and creating your own a system of, okay, how do I find these probate deals? What softwares am I using? What attorneys am I connected with? And you build a process around this. Well,
Mhm.
that can, once you build that and do it, it's a machine and those things just
Right.
run on their own. And all you got to do at that point is maintain it and close those deals. And I would
Yeah.
imagine, again, not doing it myself, I would very much imagine that that's a pretty easy thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you figure it out, it's really not that hard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's crazy that, I was here coming into this thinking we were just going to talk, some boring attorney stuff, and now I got all kinds of ideas rolling
See,
around in
look,
my head. So
I'm not that boring,
see,
right?
see, I knew it.
I
I
am
knew it.
I am kind of
Yes.
boring, but
No, no, this is great. And it is, in fairness, like I I have a thing I say all the time that I don't like attorneys, no offense, but because honestly, a lot of the attorneys I know are men, and a lot of them are what I would say are a little on the arrogant side, and it's difficult speaking to them because they talk to you like you're an idiot, you know what I mean? And
right,
it's just like, all right, well, I'm not dealing with you, we're gonna move on from this. But and then also too, it's like CPAs, it's like any other professional deal. Like most people, because when I do these interviews and conversations with folks that do these different jobs, I go on YouTube or go on different spots to look because I want to see if someone's like posting content, putting stuff out there, like they can actually hold a conversation as opposed to
right,
just running through all the code and just saying, here's what you do. And it's
right.
a breath of fresh air, to be able to talk to you and be able to understand that, hey, no, like obviously you know what you're talking about, but also you're able to communicate that to the layman, which I think is a challenge for a lot of people in your position.
Yeah, no, there are a lot of terrible attorneys. I can't fault you for there's a lot of them I don't like either. And I don't know I don't know why attorneys give themselves that bad rap. But
I think it's probably built around what it takes to become an attorney, right? Because, if you've got to go through that many years of study and it's dense, right? I mean, I'm guessing,
yeah.
but I mean, it's a lot. You're reading massive books and taking huge tests and memorizing so much stuff. And I think that a person that's geared towards sales is going to be less likely to get into that profession because their
Mm.
personality doesn't fit it. And then it's kind of like doctors, right? Doctors are great doctors, but they are terrible business people, right? So,
You do Yeah, what you're saying is now I hadn't thought about that, but it is resonating with me because I grew up in a family that was very academic.
yes.
Uh em- Focused on learning things. You go into a profession. A lot of my family just work 9 to 5, uh, that type of thing. My husband grew up in a sales family.
Mhm.
Everyone in his family sells something. They sell something different, and not in the like smarmy salesman type of way,
Mhm.
but the
Yeah, yeah,
way of like building relationships and
yeah,
helping people find what they need. And in doing that,
yeah,
helping yourself. And I really was not exposed to that type of profession, honestly, until I met my husband. And his whole
yeah,
family is in that. And they were not exposed to anybody in my type of profession. And I think that's probably where I ended up kind of realizing that both have so much to gain from each other.
Oh yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
work together, and that's what I find with my staff too. I started doing these like personality tests for all my staff because I got
Great.
some things that I'm really good at. I got some things that I'm really terrible at. And
Yeah.
I am too old and too done with it to try and make myself better at the things that I'm not good at when I can team up with somebody who is already good at those things.
Yes. Absolutely.
Obviously, you have to have a base level of competence in everything that matters. But beyond that, I want to focus on what I'm good at and what I like. And I want to team up with people that are good at the other things. And I think that's how realtors and lawyers can work together.
Yeah.
They do the things they like and that they're good at, and they team up with somebody else to do the other part of it.
Well, and what you've done too, maybe even not fully realizing it to some extent, but just to pull the curtain back a little bit for folks, like when I do this show, I typically will find a topic or people that I want, or, I go through LinkedIn a lot, look at articles and just whatever. It's like inspiration will come up. Oh, I want to talk about this, or this is an interesting person I'd like to meet, or whatever. Right. But doing what I do, and as long as I've been doing the show a little over 2 years now, I do get not regular, but I get a fair amount of emails from people that say,
Yeah.
hey, we would like to be on the show. And what I found in doing that is, or what I found in taking people on in that circumstance is it's very hit or miss, right?
Yeah.
Either this person's going to be good or they're not. And there's not a
Right.
whole lot of in between. And
Yeah.
so, and so in your case, you had somebody, and I can't remember if she was from your office or if it's a
Yeah.
service that you
She is.
paid,
No, she works for me. She's in my
that reached
office.
out to me and was like, hey, this is something, we'd like to talk about. And then of course we met and kind of went over some topics. And that's one of the reasons, like usually if I call somebody and I'm like, hey, I want you on the show, I
Right.
don't
You've already
meet
vetted
with them.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't meet with them ahead of time and go over, but anytime I have somebody come from outside, I always want to have a conversation, right? Try to figure out what we're going to do. And then also be like, is this going to work or not?
Right.
But doing your profession and what you do as a lawyer is that piece of it goes missed a lot. And now granted, they have to have something for them to sell, which is you, which is
Right.
great. You're a good product, right? But you have to have somebody, because if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to solicit yourself out, and I mean in this bad way, but you know what I'm
Right.
saying, if you're
Yeah.
not going to try to get appearances like this, or try to do more marketing stuff, or realize that you have a YouTube channel, like
Yeah. I
when all
mean, that's
that's
really where I get most of my leads, my YouTube channel.
but if you're not doing that stuff, then you're not going to have the level of success that you could.
Yeah.
And even in your profession, the value for that, I think, is lost on attorneys, because they just like, well, I'm great. They'll come to me when they come to me, or they have their tried and true methods of getting business, or whatever the case may be. And the reason I say this is because it very much translates to real estate, because realtors, they don't understand that, or many of them don't understand that your presence online, the posting, and not just your walkthrough of your home that you're listing, but your actual, like, who am I? What am I about? What do I know? Where are my competencies? And what's my niche? And if you're constantly putting that stuff out there on a regular basis, people will find you and they will be
Mhm.
attracted to what you're selling at that point. And so it's such a crucial part of running a business that we all know. I know how to do loans. You know how to do law. Agents know how to do real estate. But the how do I get myself out there in front of people so I can do more is the part
Right.
that I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's again, it's just connecting with other people. How does
Yeah.
your network help me? How can my network help you? And that's kind of
Yeah.
my
It's
approach.
awesome.
And I think it's an approach that works for most people if they are willing to take the time to figure it out.
So this is, before we wrap up here, we only got a few minutes left. I don't want to take up too much of your time, because I know you charge by the hour, but
You'll get a bill.
but
No, I'm just kidding.
that's right. That's right. But I did, and I mentioned this to you before, and you kind of brought it up on your own, which is great. I always like to, because a lot of the shows that I do are around artificial intelligence and how they're impacting everything, because it's impacting everything, whether
Mhm.
you're on board with it or not. So
Right.
you had mentioned earlier about an AI tool, or some, you don't know who they are exactly. That's fine. But some AI tools out there that can actually help you find some of these probate leads and identify properties that could be going through this. From your side of things, when it comes to, law and a little bit on the real estate of stuff, where are you seeing AI start to kind of penetrate, your business, and where it's having impacts for you?
So, I mean, it is having huge impacts on the legal field, just generally, not even specific to real estate. In two big reasons.
Okay.
In some areas, it makes lawyers be able to do their job easier, right?
Yep.
I can draft stuff so much faster than I could before with good
Mhm.
prompting. And, most of my clients are paying by the hour, and they would rather have something done quickly, even if it's done by AI. Obviously, it has to be vetted to make sure it's accurate,
Sure. Yeah.
especially if you're citing laws and cases. It's pretty notorious for messing that stuff up. But if, like, I'm writing a demand letter for somebody, if I just put in the facts, AI will give me a pretty good demand letter. It's
Yeah.
maybe not as good as what I would have written from scratch,
Mhm.
but it
Mhm.
takes way less time. And most of the time, the clients are going to prefer that.
Right.
They want to pay if it's good enough, it gets the job done, and they paid less for it because I could do it faster. Um,
All the
they're kind
better.
of on board with that. So
Yep.
in some sense, it's really helpful for that type of thing. I mean, and that's just the most basic type of AI. There's so much more to it than that. Where it can sometimes be annoying is when your clients are using AI and they're like, "Oh, but
They're
AI
fact
told
checking you.
me blah blah blah." I'm like, "Yeah, but you prompted it completely wrong." I mean, it's just so hard. You're now not just like educating your client, you're having to undo an education that they think they have learned from somewhere that they find as a reputable source.
Yeah.
And it can take a lot of work to kind of undo that and say, "Well, here's the holes, here's what it's missing, here's what you didn't consider," all of those things. So I know a lot of lawyers are worried that AI is going to put them out of business, and it probably actually will put some mediocre lawyers out of business, to be honest.
I think it
Um,
will.
and I
Some
mean, it's
basic
just like with,
stuff.
yeah, exactly. But I'm a firm believer that, like, there's all these things out there that we haven't even tried to tackle yet because we've been using bandwidth on these simple things. If AI can do these simple things, like, there's things we can't even imagine doing
Yeah. It gives
yet
you more, it gives you your
that.
time back.
Right. Yeah. To
Yeah.
figure out new innovations that AI can't do it. And then when AI
Yeah.
can do that, we'll have to move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Well,
But I'm
it
still
makes,
at the beginning stages of figuring it all out.
it makes every business more efficient, and you just have to
Yeah.
figure out what the lane is within that to use it, because the fear that AI is going to become this all encompassing take over the world deal. I mean, look, maybe. I mean,
Maybe.
who knows? Who knows?
Right.
I would still put it in the category of unlikely. What it really is right now is it's very specialized tools. They do very special things, very specific to something, and they do it very well and very quickly. And
Hmm.
as opposed to something that you would have to repeat a task over and over again. And it starts with basic stuff, but it builds from there. But I do have I'll give you a comeback to somebody who says, "Oh, well, AI told me this."
Uh,
So what a lot of people don't understand about ChatGPT is the worst for it, but Gemini and even Grok to some extent, these other large language models is, I always start people off with saying, okay, when you're using social media, right? TikTok, Facebook, whatever, what is the goal of that platform? What is it?
to sell you something.
Kind
That's
of.
kind
I mean, that's an
of,
end goal, but
I mean,
ultimately,
it's
like,
to get you hooked on their platform.
correct. They're trying to get you engaged, right? They want you
Right.
to stay on there as long as you
Hmm.
can, or as long as they can keep you, because they can
Right.
sell you more stuff. They can put more stuff, right? Well, these large language models, unfortunately, are no different. Okay, they're
Yeah.
very much the same. And one of the issues that you run into with them is that if you don't prompt it correctly, then you get two things that happen. One is it tells you every idea and every question you have is brilliant. Like, you are the
Hmm.
smartest person I've ever
Right.
spoken to. Where did you even come up with this? This is amazing. How
Yeah.
did you're so insightful, blah blah blah. Like, it makes you feel, you're like, oh yeah, I'm pretty awesome. This is great,
Yeah.
right? So it does that. And the second thing it does is it will not tell you if it doesn't know the answer. It'll just make
Mhm.
something up,
Like,
right?
yeah. Hmm.
And so it will fill gaps by just making something up. And until you point out to it that, no, that's not correct, and this is what
Right.
it is, then it's like, oh yeah, oh gosh, you're so smart for
That's what I
noticing that.
meant. Yeah.
Thank
Right.
you
Thank
so
you.
much. You're absolutely right for pointing that out. And for me, because I use it every day, all the time, and it's a big part of what I do every day. But I have found that it's very difficult. It's a hurdle you have to cross sometimes, because when I'm doing stuff like trying to figure out a new software, or trying to fix a water fountain in my studio, or whatever the case may be, all
Right.
these little things, my golf cart, I'll ask it questions and it'll start taking me down a rabbit hole, and I'm like, wait a minute, like this
Yeah.
is getting nowhere. None of this doesn't
Right.
even line up with what I'm looking at. And then I'll figure it out another way, and I'll go back to and be like, hey, that was not even right. And it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, my bad.
Thanks.
Like,
Right. Yeah. And
so
there's no repercussions for it messing up either. So
no. No, so use it as a baseline. And I would even say, when you brought up earlier about learning about probate, I would say very much to use chat, and tell it to reference the certain Texas laws or wherever state you're in, and get some basics about how probate works. Because then when you go approach somebody like you, or an
Mhm.
attorney here locally, you will have a base of knowledge and be able to speak intelligently about it to some extent. You may not know
Right.
everything, but it gives you a quick little, hey, here's what it is. And a lot of times it's better than watching a YouTube video, because they're usually made with somebody that's, you're like, oh God, this is going to take forever,
Yeah.
So or even better, use the YouTube video, take the transcript, and summarize it from
Yep.
there. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to use it and a lot of ways to implement it into your business and to start learning more. But I think, especially if you're a realtor and you're wanting to go down this road, I think that, number one, it's going to be a great tool for you to be able to do, but also it will help you get in contact with folks like you and be able to educate yourself on the process a little more. Because like I said in the very beginning when we started this, everybody's looking for business right now, and
Yeah.
it doesn't get much better. At least I'm all fired up after you told me about all this probate stuff, so I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody
No,
else
I mean,
is.
there's a lot of opportunities out there. And actually, something you just said made me think of another way you can try and connect with lawyers is that if you're an agent and you already have a relationship with the title company, call your title rep and tell them that you want to learn about probate and ask them to arrange a class for
Yeah.
you and whoever else they market it to. They will do it because they are always looking for ideas on how to get agents into their office.
Yep.
They can find somebody. If they can't, I can call me. I can direct them towards someone. And now you have a connection with that person who just presented the class. You can reach out to them and kind of go from there. And so, lots of opportunities out there.
Well, I know we were going to get into, some
No, we'll have to.
standard questions, but that just means you have to come back on another time
Yeah,
and we
absolutely.
can.
I have some good stories for how realtors can avoid getting sued. So we'll have to
Well,
do that
hey,
again.
look, you're the most fun attorney I've ever spoken to, so
All
we'll
right,
definitely
all
have you back
right.
on again.
I'm
And
gonna. Can I
I
put
need
that on a certificate?
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
I'm always looking for regular guests to come on and talk about topics that we've had before, and go through new stuff. And especially when the professionals like you, and after all, you are Harvard trained. So I can tell anybody who's like, hey, look, I have an Harvard trained attorney
Yeah,
on my side. So I don't know what to tell
that's
you.
right. Yeah.
But no, Carey, I can't thank you enough. This was awesome. I learned so much from this, and I hope everybody else that was listening also did. And I know you've been doing this a long time, and you've got this dialed down to a science. Even though you're in Houston, I'll give you a little bit of slack for that, but
I
I
appreciate
really
it. I
appreciate your
appreciate it.
time. And just remind everybody again of your firm, how they can contact you if they ever have any questions, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's Simple Law TX. The TX is for Texas, not for tax. Um, you can find us online at simplelawtx.com. Apparently, I have a YouTube channel. I do have an Instagram that is also Simple Law TX, and I have a lot of content there specifically for realtors.
Yes, you do a lot of content on Instagram. So I very much encourage everybody to follow. And oh, by the way, all the content that you do on Instagram, you can put right over onto
Put on
YouTube.
YouTube.
It's the
Yeah, I
same.
know.
They
God, it's
they
all.
have
I'll add
shorts.
it to my to-do list.
They have shorts too. You don't even have to
Yeah,
change it. Just copy
I
and paste
know.
that sucker over and you're good to go. All right, Carey. Well, thank you so much again. I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody for sticking around. I hope you found some good ideas on where to find some business these days. And I will have my market update for the week that'll be coming out today regarding interest rates and a couple more AI tools, some buyer seller tips. So check that out. And I wish everybody a great weekend. Carey, you too. And we'll see
All
you next
right,
time.
absolutely. Yep, sounds good.